listening to Best Forevers, a podcast for kindred spirits. This is Alysa Lucas, and I'm 40 years old. Okay, I'm not technically as I record this, but by the time it gets into your ear holes, I will have had my 40th birthday. And that's a big one. I mean, how ancient do kids think I am at 40, right? And to be fair, I thought anyone who was like 5 years older than me when I was a teenager was old, right? Like the things you like, the things you do, sounds boring, never heard of it, don't care. But this is a big birthday. 30 was a big birthday. 25 was a big one, right? You can finally rent a car. You got 21 where you're able to drink. Well, I'm like practically twice the age of those of you who are turning 21. And so it's not something that I'm bitter about. I'm excited about it. But it finally gives me a chance to talk about a topic that I think fits with me turning 40 and also fits with friendship. And that is talking about age and friendship. When we're kids, we are sort of placed into these groups. Like episode 1 talked about, I was looking for friends coming out the womb and that my mom had a babysitting co-op and all those kids were in my crew. And then, as you start to get older, you have friends that are in your classes or in the different extracurricular activities you do, or maybe they live in the neighborhood, but everyone's generally the same age. And in fact, it can be frowned upon to have someone as a friend who is younger or older than you, right? Until a certain point when you graduate college and you realize that the people around you are not the same age as you anymore. And so are we prepared to be friends with people of different ages? Are we open to it? And so this is going to be a 2-part episode. In the first part, I talked to Bia, who is a friend of mine that I worked with at Mansfield University of Pennsylvania. We've done a lot of traveling together. As she mentions, EF tours, that's one of the ways in which we've traveled. And so she is about 14 years older than me. And so we're going to talk about first, of course, our friendship origin story, because that's always where we start here on Best Forevers. And then we start talking about friendship in general, and then moving into these ideas of how age plays into who we're friends with or what advantages or disadvantages there are to being friends with people of different ages. I think this is an important conversation. Let's not miss out on people, but also if someone isn't good for you, let's not be friends. But I think sometimes we can see age as a barrier. And so through the next 2 episodes, first with Bia, and then next time I will talk with my friend Ashley, who's 10 years younger than me. And so having those conversations with different people to get a real good idea about how age plays a role and how people view age in terms of friendship. So let's start out. And first, here is Bia. So Bia, thank you so much for joining me. I'm glad to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I feel like this is a long time coming, though. I don't know. It's not something necessarily that we have talked about podcasts, but I just feel like as friends, I should have had you on sooner.
Oh, well, I know you mentioned me in a few of your podcasts.
Yes, I have mentioned you, yes. Yeah. So Bia and I are going to talk about our friendship. I can't wait to hear your side of the story because, we always do the friendship origin story. That's where we start. How did we become friends? Talk a little bit about our friendship. And then we're going to talk a little bit about age and friendship. So Bia, do you remember meeting me or when we became friends?
I can remember meeting you when you were hired as just a temporary faculty. Yep. And your office was down the hall from mine. You had a bunch of posters and stuff in there, like that your students made.
Yeah.
And I was not on the committee that hired you. That I don't remember. It's like you just appeared. That's what I remember. And I don't know why, over the summer, if something happened, whatever. But I do remember going into your office and seeing these posters. And then you and I started talking. And it was like, you're from Michigan, I'm from Michigan. And then you went to Penn State, I went to Penn State. And it's like, are you following me? Like what? And then just talking a little bit more. But I think you were teaching extra classes or were doing something and you weren't around a lot. Yeah. So I don't remember seeing you a ton. And it was just a 1-year temporary position. And you might have only been teaching Monday, Wednesday, Friday, something.
Yeah, I had 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, and 11. Wait, 8, 9, 10, 11, or 9, 10, 11, 12. I had back to back to back, and it was Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And I'm sure listeners would love to hear this one more time, but that was also the summer after, or that was the semester after my appendix burst.
Yeah.
And so that first semester, I was literally running, because there were 4 different buildings too. I was literally running from one building to the other, and I'm sweating, and I'm like, is this because I've been sick? Is this because, is this hard? There's mountains at the school at Mansfield University. Everything is hilly. You know, I think of when grandparents say, we had to walk up a hill both ways.
Yeah.
And that's accurate at Mansfield. Like, the hill between our building and others you go up and you have to go up a hill twice. So I think that was part of why you might not have seen me, is I was probably home on Tuesday, Thursday recovering.
Well, yeah, and I think you and I, we might have had opposite teaching schedules. So when you were around, I was in class, vice versa.
Yeah.
But what I remember after you went tenure track and we moved into Allen.
Yeah, which we were in an old
Hemlock,
which was an old residence hall. And I remember doing a phone interview, which, you know, there's certain rules and requirements for applying and going through the interview process. So I applied for the tenure track position, and, you know, other people applied as well. And I think you interviewed other people, but we had to do a phone interview. So I was in my office with the door closed, and they were in like this conference room or a room across the hall in there. And I could hear you on the phone, but I could also hear you through the door. Like, this isn't awkward at all, right? But then we moved into a brand new building, and we had new offices, and then our offices were near each other.
Yeah, so that's what I remember more of that. And then you took sewing classes with me.
Yes, Via, you had a sewing studio.
Yeah.
So you can, am I right?
Yes.
Did I remember that correctly?
Yeah.
And you're amazingly creative and like, but also you very much got like the math down on everything. That always amazed me, like with your patterns. I was like, 1/4 inch plus 1/4. What? But I had never done anything like that. I've always said I don't consider myself creative, but I do now in terms of having like creative ideas and doing the podcast. But that was the first time I had done anything with my hands creative, like actually making something. And do you remember, did it go well the first time? I remember only needing one Band-Aid, I believe.
Yeah, I remember the eye-opener when you were taking the beginning sewing class, that I said something about the bobbin, and you looked at me and you were like, what's a bobbin? And I'm like, I have to change the class, because I never thought, like, I thought everyone knew, you know, when we talk about language and shared meaning.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh my God, I never thought that people would not know what that is.
Yeah.
Because it's so ingrained, like it's secondary.
And I'm like, what is that?
Right.
Is that why you closed the studio?
No, I was a victim of my own success.
You're like, oh my God, I can't even teach people who don't know what a bobbin is. But I still have your binder. I'll take a picture of it and post it. Like, I still have a binder from that beginning class, because it was several weeks. We made a pillowcase. We made a bag.
Tote bag, yeah. And then the drawstring bag.
And the drawstring bag.
But that was a fun, that was a real fun community. And I still see a lot of the people who took classes with me. And they're all like, oh my gosh, that was so much fun. You need to do it again. And I'm like, yeah, no. Like, it's just, because as you know, and this is an interesting bend on friendship, I'm not a people person. Like, I can do it, then I'm exhausted, and then I need to not be around people.
So then to do constant classes, and then as people are like, what's a bobbin? And what's this thing? Because I learned a lot from that binder you gave, because you had like definitions and things like that in there. Because I didn't know, what do you call it? Now I'm blanking on it too, because I haven't sewed in a while. It's like the essential things you need, but there's a different word for it. Like, you need
notions.
Yes. I was like, what I understand of a notion has nothing to do with sewing.
Right, exactly. A different word. Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's really interesting, is that how people approach friendship in terms of maybe, personality wise, or this idea that, it takes a lot of energy to be around people, and then like going home and then unwinding or being by yourself. And
yeah,
I would say that I would use the cliche, I'm a people person, but at the same time, I hate small talk.
Yes.
And my students are always like, you teach this class. And I'm like, doesn't mean I like everything about communication. I hate small talk where it doesn't feel like it's going anywhere or doing anything. And it's just like, this room, right? And the elevator will get stuck and it's cold. And it like, oh, I don't like any of that.
No, I just find that it's kind of boring.
Yeah.
And some people are really good at that. I can be, but I act.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I don't think my students understand when I tell them I'm more introverted. They're like, no way, you're so much fun in class and you do this. And I'm like, and then I go home and I fall asleep on the sofa in my coat. Like, and I could go Friday, I get home and the only person I talk to until Monday is the cashier at the grocery store.
Amen.
And that is, you talk about friendships and stuff. That is a struggle when you're more introverted.
Yeah.
But the friendships that I've had for a while, it's not as exhausting because it's more natural.
Yeah.
See, it's an organic, like our conversation before we started.
Yeah. We talked for like an hour and a half.
Yeah. I mean, and it just flowed naturally. Yeah. So there was no, like my brain's not thinking about what am I going to say next. I don't have to. Yeah. This kind of comes
so it's
up,
like once you kind of get in it. And so I actually remember our origin story a little bit differently. And I did meet you on my interview and I was really nervous. You made me nervous. But I also thought that you were, and it could have been interview, right? And interview process is nerve-wracking. And I hadn't done that many interviews at that point. But made me a little nervous, but at the same time, you were really helpful once I was hired, right? Like you sent me your email address you sent me information about the class I was going to be teaching. And although I've told the story to death in terms of my appendix bursting, and then once my mom, who had come to take care of me, had left, I had thrown my back out and I didn't have anyone to call. The only thing I could think of was to email you. and I'm like, but who checks their email like on a Sunday every 2 seconds waiting for me to be like, hey, so I think I only had your email address at that point, but I just remember you being very helpful about things. And I do remember that one of the questions you did ask me, and maybe this was the second interview, but I love this question. You asked me this, you probably won't remember it, but it speaks to me. And I was like, yes, thank you for asking. You said, what would your friend say about you? Described. And I was like, that's a great way to get to know someone. And I love the friendship angle. So I do remember that, but I do feel like that first year I was there in the temporary position, it was, it was a little survival mode, right? Like, I've been sick or where am I at? What am I doing? Getting acclimated and that sort of thing. But I think as soon as we moved into Allen Hall, and then I took the first sewing class, like I didn't have a sewing machine at the time. And I would come into the studio when you were working and use the sewing machine there when it wasn't class time. And you really just like tapped into something that I didn't realize that I had in me. And one of my favorite things to do, and then we would go to Joann Fabrics together,
Oh my God, yeah.
We would do these Friday trips, like where we would go
to Target,
Joann, other places out there. And then we would go to the grocery store or whatever. And then whoever drove, like unload at the other person's house. But I remember going to Joann Fabrics, and one of my favorite things to do is actually match fabrics together. Mm-hmm. And there are a couple things that you have said that always stick with me. And the first one deals with sewing. And when I see something in a store, I'll say, Bea would tell me, you can make that. Like, so I remember saying that I saw this really cool apron at Pier 1, and you were like, don't pay money for that. You can make it. And then you created the pattern for this super cool apron. And then we had a class, and it's the coolest apron ever. And I will post pictures and everything because it's amazing. And I love all the fabrics I've picked out. And so that always stuck to me. And then the second thing, I think that we started to really get to know each other also when we would commute together.
Yes.
So we lived in the same place, and it was about a half hour away from the school. And so we would commute. You would drive a week and I would drive a week. And we used to call it our little think tank.
Yeah. We got so much done in the car, just brainstorming. Yeah.
Solving problems, coming up with new ideas. I remember one time Bea drove and I put together an entire activity where I was like stapling stuff and got it done in the half hour. But, you know, one of the things is that time I think was really cool. We could just talk about anything, and some of it might be work related or not. But when there was any like difficulties, and I'm really hard on myself, I'm a perfectionist. And at that time, I was still newer to teaching. Like I had been a graduate student, but I really do feel like I came into my own as a teacher at Mansfield, right? And I think that's a lot because of you and Sue, who was in a previous episode, and Holly, another colleague, and like just really putting things into teaching. But I would, really be hard on myself. And you would say, you know what? Your worst day is probably better than most other teachers' best days.
Yeah.
And like, those are the things that stick with me. In fact, I was at Target yesterday and I saw something and I was like, Bea would tell me I can make that.
But will you?
So I feel like those are two very wise nuggets of information, of wisdom that I received for you. So I will publicly thank you now. But I did love our commutes.
It's nice to know someone's paying attention.
Yeah, sometimes doesn't it feel like, we say things, we talk to people, we have friendships, we have relationships, we have interactions. And a lot of times we might not realize the impact that we have on other people. Yeah. And sometimes that we just need to tell people the impact because, we don't know if what we're saying is helpful or it's reaching someone who does need help, whatever the case is. And so you've had an impact, I'll tell you that.
Thanks, too. It's funny that you say that because one of the things I think as faculty and teachers in general, we get evaluations.
Yeah.
But those are canned. Not everyone fills them out. But I often have students who email me when they pick a topic for their speech, and the topic is from something that happened in class or something that they read about or something that a teacher inspired them. So if they email me or if they talk to me and say, I had this really great class with Dr. So-and-so.
Yeah.
I love it. I always email that teacher and say, I just want to let you know. And the faculty are always like shocked.
Yeah.
Because I don't think you're right. We don't do that enough.
Yeah.
And I think it's that culture of competitiveness and things like that.
Yeah.
But the thing that I've learned in all my 20 plus years of teaching is, we're all good at something when it comes to teaching. So let's celebrate. And there's always a teacher or someone there who a student will gravitate to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why I think, I look at Mansfield and my colleagues at Mansfield is there's always a student who gravitates to us.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be the same person. So if I look at the department, if a student has, more problems with personal stuff, they might go to one person.
Yeah.
But if they want help with an assignment or writing or like in my technology they might come to me. And I think that's what makes those work colleagues and those work friendships work is that we all realize that we all bring something different to the table. So, and it's balancing that.
I can't tell you how much I've learned from you in terms of technology. And we were joking about this before we started recording, but that I have dreams of efficiency when it comes to the things I do, but sometimes you don't feel like you have the time or energy to figure out that more efficient system. So you just do the old system, which takes longer. And Bea is efficient and has great ideas. And so it has me thinking about assignments in different ways, but just also how to use technology in a helpful way, like a way that is going to make the student experience or the experience of you as the teacher evaluating or doing whatever you're doing easier or better or more positive. And so that's, and here I am, I'm in technology all the time, but I'm like, what you do? What in the classroom?
Yeah. Well, and it's funny too, because like I use Google Drive a lot.
Yeah.
And the people at Mansfield are like, you need to use this. And I'm like, I'm trying to teach my students a skill that when they graduate, they can use.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the content management systems like Blackboard or D2L, a company's not going to have that.
Yeah.
But they will have Google. So the students complain about it until they start using it. And then they're like, this is the greatest thing ever. And then I'll get, the student graduates and then I'll get an email back. Hey, I just wanted to let you know that I created a Google form at work and they all think I'm a genius or something. So, yeah, I mean, and that again is because I have connections with people who do use technology and, getting back to friendships, I'm not, like I said, I'm not like a real social person and I'm more a task-oriented person. So I'm not someone who people hang out with to have fun. It sounds bad, but or the traditional idea of fun. Like,
as I'm like thinking of all the times that we've had fun, I'm like, was that not fun for you?
I mean, but the thing is, if you notice, our fun, most people would think is weird.
Yeah.
Like our fun driving in the car to work, talking about activities.
Yeah.
Class activities.
Yeah.
And it's like, our mouths are just going a mile a minute.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's fun.
Yeah.
But I think there are other ways to look at what friendships are built around.
Yeah.
But I grew up around that. Like, even when we would travel, my parents, because my mom sewed, my dad's a carpenter.
Yeah.
We would go on vacation to my aunt and uncle's house and work.
Yeah. And me and my brothers just laid around and waiting for breakfast where we could have Fruit Loops and white toast and butter on it. Thanks, Grandma and Grandpa.
It's like we would go to Nebraska because my aunt and uncle, my dad's brother lived in Nebraska, and my dad and my uncle would paint. Yeah. So it was like their relationship was always built around, and they always had a blast. Like my uncle was hilarious. Yeah. And my dad, you'd put those two of them together and it was hilarious, but that's what the relationship revolved around was. And my friend Maria's the same way. Like there's usually a project. So it's very project based friendships.
My friend Sarah and her friend Jen, they do a lot of, I would say, task/fun oriented things. Like I know they do the game, Ticket to Ride. It's a train game, it's a board game. And they live at a distance, so they'll play. They each have a board and they'll play. So it's like they'll talk on the phone and play the game at the same time. And then when Jen visited, they had all these like craft projects that they would do. Like, so they're working on these things. So it's like doing these activities. But it makes me wonder, thinking about like your family vacations being work, what do you think you learned about friendship as a child from your parents, your family, from school, just general community? How was friendship discussed?
I would say it really wasn't. Like, you didn't really talk about it. Yeah. And I think a lot of it, too, is one of my friends who I've known my entire life, like over 50 years. Yeah. I did not live in a neighborhood where there were a lot of kids. Oh. Yeah. And so she and I and my brother, we kind of grew up together, and there were ebbs and flows. She's younger than me, a little bit younger than me. But again, because I was, and I guess I would say I was weird as a child, I thought I was normal.
You're fine.
But, I was not one of these kids who just hung out with other kids. There would always have to be something,
like a reason for it, like a purpose to get together.
Yeah, a purpose to get together. Like my friend Lisa had a pool, so we would go swimming. But Lisa and I, we are complete opposites. Yeah. But we wouldn't just lounge in the pool. Yeah. Like we would do acts.
Oh, learning new information today.
Like swimmer. Because that's what you do in the 70s because there's nothing else going on. We would put our 8-track in, but we would come up with an act where everything was synchronized. We dive in at the same time. We do somersaults in the water. We play Marco Polo. So it wasn't, like I said, just lounging around.
You had an agenda. We have to learn the choreography. We have to time it out. We have to perfect it. We have to perform it.
Exactly. Again, I'm not an insider, so I don't know what other people's friendships are built around.
Yeah.
But it always seemed to be a task. Like there was always something. And even now, like I love to cook with other people.
Yeah.
I'm not one of these people, like I want to go to a friend's house for a potluck where you just show up and you eat. Yeah. Like that's not my idea of fun. I want to go there and get involved in it where we're working together. So there's like a team building element to that friendship. And I think for a lot of people, that's weird.
Yeah.
But I find that for me, I'm most comfortable. And I think you learn a lot about people. The conversations seem to be more organic for me when I do that. So usually when I think about my close friends, like I mentioned, Lisa, we don't do our acts anymore.
I'm really disappointed.
We had matching swimsuits and everything.
And it's too bad it was the 70s, because if that was now, there'd be video, there'd be Snapchats, there'd be pictures.
You might have some big 8 somewhere.
Yeah.
But even now when I go back to Michigan and see her, usually she has a job for me.
Yeah.
And then we figured out together. So last time when I was home a few months ago, she needed help with some technology thing at work with photo editing. And so that's what we did. We sat and figured that out.
Yeah.
And we also are both big thrifters.
Yeah.
She likes garage sales, thrift stores. So, we went thrift store shopping together, which is kind of a fun thing to do. My friend Maria, there's always some sort of project that she has. And it's funny because when we talk, she's like, if you lived here, we'd be going antiquing and that's what it's kind of built around. So it's not a friendship where we just go over to the other person's house and sit and have coffee. Like it's not one of those. None of my friendships are like that.
I was going to say, I don't think our friendship was ever like that. The only time I think we sat around and did anything was after I got the position at Central. I moved, but I was still teaching a class here, and I stayed with you for a week. And I remember getting to your house, and I think you were watching Catfish, and I was like, "Yay!" So I think we watched that. But usually, it was sewing. It was talking in the car. It was going on our trips to get the things that we needed at Target, and so on and so forth. I remember walking with you a couple times, but you're too fast for me.
Right. Well, and a lot of those things I prefer to do by myself.
Yeah. You're like, no, thank you. But so those things, I think that was the only time where we did anything like that. And that was a unique situation because you were so gracious to let me stay with you. But even then, I had moved and had spent like a weekend unpacking. And I had moved into an apartment that was handicap accessible. And so there was nothing over the sink. Like there were no cupboards. And so you created a skirt for me. So we went to Joann's and we picked out fabric and we did all that kind of stuff. And then you made the skirt for me. And so it's like, even all that, and it was about that task. I remember taking photos at Joann's of all the different fabric we were finding. Do you remember the fabric I'm thinking of with all the construction worker men on it? Like, hey, ladies.
Chippendales men.
I still have that picture.
I do, yeah. And it's like, who thought of making that fabric?
What is it used for?
I have
overalls for a construction worker. Like, I don't understand.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why anyone would.
It was really funny though. But also, so I can appreciate that. Like, there's different types of friendships. There's different things that, task oriented, but it's also when you're doing the task, that's when you can get to know someone. That's when you can have that fun that is associated, that enjoyment that's associated with friendship. But one of the things that I find interesting about friendship is usually, so you were talking about Lisa at the pool and you hung out with your brother, that sort of thing. It was like sort of brought y'all together, maybe because you lived in a similar area. That was the case for me. I remember in episode 1, I talked about my first friends were through the babysitters co-op that my mom had with other ladies from church. And so a lot of times we are placed in groups based on age, right? Like, or you're supposed to be friends with people in your grade, or your ballet class, or your soccer team, or this thing or the other thing. And so I do feel like our friendships often have an age cap, if you will, or like we think about it in terms of age. How do you think our society looks at age and friendship in terms of the age of people who are friends together? Would you agree that we're kind of forced into, similar age groups, and that's how we make friends?
Well, I think a lot of it, when I look at my friends, we're all about the same age. Like, I have a handful of friends like you, my friend Jeanette, younger than me, but most of my friends are the same age, and I don't have a lot of new friends. Most of the people who I'm friends with, I've known for like 6-7 years.
Yeah.
But most of my close friends, I've known probably over 25-30 years.
Wow. Yeah.
Because I went to college with them.
Yeah.
I'm kind of maybe an anomaly because I don't have a huge social circle, but most everyone is my own age because of that.
Yeah.
And the handful of people around here who I hang out with, some are maybe a few years older. One of them who I met sewing is about, I think, same age as you. I think she's going to be around 40. And like we went hiking, but she's married. So again, that kind of plays into it. How we get, and it was funny because when we were hiking, she was laughing. She's like, I really like our friendship because it's like, do you want to do this? Hey, I'm running to Turks to get flowers. You want to go with me? Sure.
Yeah.
It's just one of those, again, a task.
Yeah.
And she lives like I could see her house from here. It's like she lives 5 houses away. We don't just kind of hang out in their backyard and drink beer together, but they're not like that either. There's usually, like, they don't have parties where people just come and hang out.
Yeah.
But I think when I look at friends who are different ages, I'm not friends with a lot of people who are younger than me just because they're going through different things than me. And I hate to say this, I don't have the patience to tolerate boyfriend all that. It's like, I don't care.
Yeah.
And that might be mean, but that's the beauty of being almost 54. I don't care, whatever. You don't need to like me, whatever.
Yeah.
So again, you think that boyfriend, it's like, it's so inconsequential to what my friends are dealing with.
Yeah.
And a lot of it, like, I'm not a big drinker.
Yeah.
So a lot of people who I know, who I've met here, a lot of things revolve around socializing and drinking, which I don't do. When I go kayaking, my brother and I go kayaking, and my brother's almost 2 years older than me, a year and a half older than me. It's the quiet that we like. And I'm all, it's like I'm at that age. I'm all about hydration, sunscreen, that type of stuff. Whereas people who are a lot younger than me don't care, they're not concerned about that.
Yeah.
So, I want to see the turtles and I like that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So
it might be the case that like the age doesn't matter. It matters what we have in common. And so therefore, if you have things in common, then age shouldn't matter.
Right. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because I was going to say, then why are Jeanette, and I know you're referring to Amy. Hi, Amy. Yeah. so what are waving down the street to her. So what might be the exception with Jeanette, Amy, and myself? Is it because we had things in common? Was it at a particular time in your life? Or maybe it was a particular time in our lives. I don't know. What makes us the exceptions?
I think a lot of it is similar personalities, like a good sense of humor.
Yes, those are always nice.
Jeanette is a little bit of an anomaly because we met traveling. Mm-hmm. I used to work with her uncle, and we went on an EF tour together. Mm-hmm. And we were originally not roommates. And then the people who we were with were like, hey, do you two want to room together so we can room together? We're like, sure. Yeah. And the first night, I think we got 2 hours of sleep because all we did was laugh.
Oh, that's awesome.
And she and I we're both Virgos. We have very similar personalities. Yeah. Like, we don't tolerate crap from people. a little abrasive, and it's hard to find someone who gets that.
Yeah.
So she and I can be like, we don't put up with BS and that type of thing. So she's not real sensitive with stuff that we say to each other, which I can be a little abrasive at times, and it kind of takes the right kind of person. Mm-hmm. But you and Amy, because you're fun and you're more laid back, I think you can handle that about me.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of developed. And again, you and I worked together.
Yeah. So
I think that just kind of happened because when you lived here, we didn't hang out a lot together. And socializing and everything that we did was revolved around, a part of it had to, maybe because we were single.
Yeah.
And Amy is just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But again, we do things together casually.
Yeah.
They bought a house. So, it's kind of helping each other out, that type of thing. Yeah. But it seems to be revolved around, none of us are overly social.
Yeah.
Because I met some people here when I was in the running club, and they do group runs, and I'm like, I run to get away from people. Like that.
Literally, isn't that like I run because I'm getting chased? I'm trying to get away from people.
That's my time to process things. So I never really, nothing against any of them if they're listening, but they do a lot of social activities where they just get together and drink and hang out, and that is exhausting for me.
Yeah.
And so those friendships just kind of fell to the wayside.
Yeah.
And I don't see, some of them I haven't seen in almost a year.
Wow. Yeah.
And again, I just think that kind of happens.
Yeah.
So they were a lot younger than me, and
well, that's the thing is I would definitely say I'm far more sensitive than you are. I sometimes don't put up with crap, or I don't want to put up with crap, but then maybe have this veneer of I have to be polite, or something like that. And so, but one of the things is I appreciate and respect who you are as a person. So it's not something where I'm like, it's not like you're mean, you know what I mean? I'm like,
well, I don't mince words.
Yeah, no. And there's something to be said about saying what you mean and there not being games about it. I know exactly what I'm going to give for, I know that if I ask you something, you're going to tell me exactly what you think, or, there isn't some mystery where I have to decode it. I need a decoder ring or any of that sort of thing. And I just feel I'm probably more social than you are, but when I worked at Mansfield, I was not as social there.
Right.
And I think that does reflect the idea that it can be really hard to make friends, even when you're a social person and you're in a small area, right? And running, I mean, I have asthma, so it's I can't keep up with a running club. Is there an asthmatic running club? What kind of misfits are in that group, right?
They'll be only doing the 5Ks.
Exactly. And can we walk it? But it's one of those things, it is hard to meet people. And so I think that is a lot where I became maybe more introverted. And then when I did go to do social stuff, it becomes more exhausting for me. And so I would say I'm both now. You know what I mean? I think that was something that developed over time. But I had a really hard time making friends when I was at Mansfield. And I would say colleagues are great. Some of the people I met in your sewing class were great. And then I was part of the Penn State Alumni Association. I met people that way. But when I left there, after I was there 4 years, I keep in contact with you and Sue and then a couple other people on Facebook. But it's not, I was there 4 years. And so then you take that into account, but then you also take into account someone who might be introverted, that it can be even harder to make friends, especially if you describe yourself as abrasive. Other people might be oh, and you're no, thank you, right? Because they get whiny about it, or they can't handle it, and
then just drama.
Yeah. Oh, that's the other thing. Yeah, drama. People who are always got something going on. I'm did you ever think that it's you?
Well, and the thing is, I just avoid those people. It's get them out of my life. They're exhausting.
Yeah. Snip, snip, cut, cut. Right. Yeah. Well, I think this is really interesting because, I think our society does say, though, that there is this level of, especially up and through definitely through high school, if not through college, because of like 18 years old, that, when you're a teenager, your parents probably don't want you hanging out with older kids, or even if you're,
right.
A tween and someone's in high school, it's like, whoa, you're not in the same developmental areas.
Right.
So we don't want you growing up too fast by being friends with this person. And so I think that continues through college, and that, some students who are traditional students, are in college between 18 and 25. They might have an experience with a non-traditional student and then maybe with their faculty. But I think it's when we get jobs and go into the workplace where you start to realize that, at Mansfield, was it like 3,600, 4,000 people there?
Yeah, 3,000. Yeah.
3,000. I'm at Central, it's about 20,000. Even 3,000 people is a large pool of people. 20,000 is a large pool of people. But then when you go to your work office and you work with 8 other people, and, the next person in age is 20 years older than you, or everyone is married, I think that is a realization for people about maybe maintaining friendships that they have. Like the friendships that you've had for 25 to 30 years, you're like, I'm probably not going to find a friendship here. I might have to go out and do something else to make friends. Or I think we can also realize that the people in our office or in our workplace, the people we work with, despite their age or our age, we can be friends if we have something in common. And I think there is a level of, no, that's not the way it goes. But I also think you're exactly right. Like if you don't have things in common with people because of the lifespan, then it's going to be hard to relate to each other.
Well, and they might not gravitate to me. Like I might want to be friends with them for a particular reason, but in the friendship group, they hang out with other people.
Yeah.
And then I'm there less and less. And it's like, I'm also old enough to understand, like, you can't force those things.
Yeah.
Because people need particular people in their life at a particular time.
Yeah.
So with what someone might be going through at 40, what they need are other 40-year-olds who are going through something similar, maybe not me. So again, like I might know a bunch of people, but the 40-year-olds kind of group together just because they have more fun together. And I'm this person, they're like, hey, do you want to go out? No. Or, hey, we're going to do this. Do you want to go? Thanks, but no. And then after a while, they just stop asking.
Yeah.
Which I don't care. I mean, whatever. Because again, I just prefer to hang out with my cats. And
you have great cats. That's the other thing that B and I have in common. Our cats are amazing. And actually, it is through you that I have any of the cats that I have, because you introduced me to your cat sitter, and she knew someone whose cat went up and dropped some babies on the porch.
Yeah.
That's where Rooney came from. And then she became my cat sitter, and then she connected me with someone who had Ferguson. And so, I have cats because of you. So thank you. They're the best. They're my best friends. I love them. And I'm going to do an episode about the meaning of like our pets and animals in terms of friendship a little bit later this summer. So I might have to have you come back and talk a little bit about your cats. Babies. But one of the things that you did say is like, 40-year-olds might gravitate to 40-year-olds because they have things in common, and it might not be with you. But at the same time, I would imagine that people who are 40 years old, I don't have a lot in common with, because many people who are 40 are married with children, and I am not. And so we have that in common. So I feel like if we're friends with people who are our age and we get along, that's great. If we're friends with people who are not our age and we get along, that's great. It's about what we need and that connection together. And that sometimes I think, like, even myself, a little bit younger, maybe I wasn't as open to people who were older than me. Because, you ask me, like, my nephew how old I am. He's like, I'm probably like, you're like 90. I don't know, you're old. And I saw a student of mine who I will not call out, but posted on Twitter that, oh my God, we're old, like a bunch of 40-year-olds. And I was like, I was like, 40 isn't old. I was like, stop that. But when you're 21, 22, it is, right? That's almost twice how long they've been alive. And it's like, you might have things in common, but I'm 40. And so not old. Well, I'm not 40 yet. I turned 40. Well, I will be by the time this episode comes out. So,
and I think too, it's one of those things where I can probably relate to what they're going through because I've been 40.
Yeah.
But for them to relate to what I'm going through, because when I talk to my friends who are my age, what we talk about, I doubt are things that you talk about with, 40-year-olds or 30.
Try me. Give me an example.
Well, retirement.
Oh, I think about retirement every day, Bia.
Yeah, well, we're planning. Like my friend has a retirement clock.
Me too. It's called the lottery. I kid.
Well, here, menopause as a woman, comparing notes, like, what do you, it's just symptoms and cures and what do you do to help with this? Yeah. And the big one that I find for many of my friends my age are aging parents.
Yeah.
Or a parent has died.
Yeah.
I have a lot of, my dad's 92, will be 93, and just moved into assisted living.
Wow.
Getting him settled in his apartment and, working with my siblings. And then, he's forgetful. And then talking to my other friends who are dealing with the same thing, like parents in their 80s, the finances, all of that are things that, most people who are younger than me don't understand. Yeah. And I have seen this on Twitter and on Facebook when people who are in their 30s are like, oh my God, my parents are getting so old. And I'm like, just wait. Yeah. Just wait till there's money running out, or your dad, who's always been the rock, has dementia. Yeah. And, all of those things. Now, some people have to deal with that when they're younger, but when you're in your 50s, it's, huge monumental things. And for a lot of people in their 50s too, not only dealing with that, but kids going away to college, empty nest, that type of thing. So, that's what the conversations.
I think that's an excellent point. And besides dreaming about the lottery, you are right. I do not talk about those topics, but I also think that seeing my parents go through that, well, my dad's mom passed before any of us kids were born. And then my grandpa passed when I was a little kid, where, I probably don't remember, but with my mom's parents, seeing all that, then it starts, you have that thought of, oh goodness, that could come soon. But it's not tomorrow, right? It's maybe that first time where you go, oh, or the first time you start to think that my parents are aging. But I think that it's just a small flag of you might want to start thinking about and having conversations at some point, but it's not anything immediate right away. And so you're right, those conversations are different. And so in some ways, by having friends who are older, you have experienced these things first, or you have these experiences that I don't have, that there's a great way in which to get support and advice. And that maybe for people with friends that are younger, maybe there's reminders of things that maybe we've forgotten as we age, right? Oh, sometimes it might be how to have fun, or
well, no, and a lot of it too is it's really easy to be settled.
Yeah.
Because it's I've done so much. I've got a routine that this is what I do. I'm comfortable.
Yeah.
That's where having younger friends helps.
Yeah.
Back, it was in the fall sometime, my friend Jeanette, who's 9 years younger than me.
Yeah.
And who I met traveling.
Yeah.
But she's like, hey, do you want to go on a trip together? And she and I travel well together because she's a planner and I'm a planner. So it's not all the burden on me.
Yeah.
We talk about what do we want to do? How do we want to plan this? And we ended up, originally we were going to go to the Florida Keys, and both of us were like, that's too much work. Because we'd have to fly, and then we'd have to rent a car, and then we'd have to get to the parking lot. And we're like, oh, it's too much work. When I was 25, I wouldn't have cared. I would have been like, it's an Sure. Now I'm like, when can I be on the beach? Like, it's just,
can you just beam me there?
But I look at what the work that I did going on vacation when I was in my 20s. Now I'm like, can I just be done? So we ended up going on a cruise.
Oh, awesome.
To Bermuda, which was really easy because we just drove. There was no flying. I went to Philadelphia, got her. We drove to Baltimore. Boom, we're there.
Yeah.
But I would have never done that without her kind of saying, hey, let's do this.
Yeah.
And I think that's where having someone who's younger, who has more energy than me. I mean, I'm pretty in good shape and have a lot of energy.
Better shape than me and more energy than me, I imagine.
I don't know anymore, but I had to buy a Fitbit because I'm like, God, am I just sitting around watching stupid shows on the Sci-Fi Channel, binge watching Eureka, like that to Star Trek. But it is, and that's the thing that I think definitely helps. And I would say, like with Amy, she's from this area. So getting out and going hiking in our state parks in New York are beautiful.
Yeah.
And kind of tagging along with Amy and her husband.
Yeah.
Again, it's nice. It kind of, because she doesn't have to deal with the stuff that I'm dealing with, which can be kind of consuming, especially with my dad, because he lives in another state, that it is nice that they don't have those problems. So when I go and we hang out, it's not a topic of conversation. So it's kind of like a mental break.
Yeah, you can take some time off from dealing with it. Yeah, to me, it just seems like there are a lot of advantages of being friends with people who are of different ages. There can be some things that could be problematic, but if you get along, you know, there's initiation on the part of Jeanette, having some mental breaks with Amy, you know, but then also them coming to you or talking to you about something where they can get advice or I can get advice from you. And then you have friends your age where you're going through the menopause together. Like, and so I think that it's like, we shouldn't restrict ourselves, right? Like, why not have some of each?
Well, and the thing that's, again, I'm a little bit unusual. I have siblings who are 13, 14, and 17 years older than me. Yeah. So this year, my oldest sister is turning 70, which always shocks people. They're like, oh my God, I can't believe I know someone who has a sister who's 70.
Yeah.
And watching them, and again, those conversations with them are very different than the conversations I have with friends my own age and friends I have younger. And a lot of it is how they've had to adapt to their body slowing down. Should they sell their house, retirement? Because they actually are retired.
Yeah.
So it's talking to them and giving them a chance to almost be a mentor.
Yeah.
And that's where I think it's really easy to poo-poo people who are older. Yeah. Like, oh, they're out of touch and they listen to the Beach Boys or, whatever.
Beach Boys are great.
I know. So because they've been through things, and I think a lot of it is just being willing to listen to those ideas. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because one of my students retweeted something about a high school student posted or tweeted like how difficult high school is. And she's like, yeah, wait till you get to college. And I'm like, yeah, wait till you graduate and get a job. And then your problems are just going to get more monumental. So it's like, you think you got problems now. Again, wait till you have a mortgage. Wait till you have kids you're trying to put through college. Wait till you're being downsized at work.
Yeah.
Do you have enough money in your retirement fund?
Yeah.
The other interesting thing too, talking about different ages is, and I talk about my friends who drink. I have a ton of friends who are in recovery.
Yeah.
They hit that in their 30s. Mm-hmm. And again, when you only hang out with people in a particular age group, you might miss out on that. And my friends who are in recovery, again, just the value that they brought to my life about being accepting for your mistakes. I'm like, man, it's kind of, and that's again, a different type of friendship that doesn't revolve around drinking. Like my friend Jeanette, who I went on the cruise with, she doesn't drink.
Yeah. Well, and so I like all these points that we've talked about, because I think that we don't want to miss out on things, on people and experiences and connections that can be really important, but also support and information. And so I like the idea of like, maybe younger folks encourage, or you learn these different things, and then older friends might remind us of these things. And like you said, your sister might be in sort of like a mentor role. So I do turn 40. And so I thought this would be a great time to ask you, what advice do you have for me in living my 40th year? What do I need to be concerned about? What advice would you give 40-year-old Bia maybe?
I'm trying to think, what was I doing when I was 40? I've just blocked it. I'm not a big past. A lot of people live in the past.
Yeah.
I'm not one of those people.
Yeah.
And I've dated people who live in the past, and I can't handle being around that. It's like they dwell on stuff.
Yeah.
But this is where I'm going to be the older person who's prepping for retirement.
Yes.
One of the things that I did in my late 30s, because that's when I started at Mansfield, and into my 40s, is really start planning for retirement and putting money away. And it's really easy to spend, and it's especially in your 40s, because I spent, but to make sure you put that money away, because you can't really make up for that.
Yeah.
And because I did that, I can retire at 60.
I'm so envious.
And that's the thing is, delaying some things, because it's really easy to think, I'm never going to have the opportunity to do this again. Well, guess what? You probably will.
Yeah.
Like, when I think of traveling, which I know you and I love to travel.
Yes. Yep.
One of the things, like a trip, I thought, I could do this, or I could put that money into retirement.
Yeah.
Or is this truly a once in a lifetime opportunity? Because a lot of it, the beauty when you're my age is you make more money.
Yeah.
So you might think, I'm 43 and I'll never have an opportunity to go to Russia again. Yeah, you will. And you'll be in your 50s and you'll have a lot more money and you can stay in a better hotel. So that's my advice to people. Like, if I could look back, I wouldn't put more money away, because as I've learned now, you got to live a little.
Yeah.
And I think it's balancing. I ended up going to a financial planner probably like 4 years ago, and that's definitely helped take the stress off of, am I putting enough money away?
Yeah.
Am I investing enough? But I think it's really easy to spend when you move into your 40s and you're making a lot more money than you probably ever have. It's really easy. Like, I look at all the stuff that I bought.
Yeah.
Now it's all at the Salvation Army. Like, it's like, I don't need this. Like, why was I buying this?
Yeah.
But my financial planner said, put your money away and then spend the rest without guilt. You really do have to start thinking about retirement when you're 40 and being realistic about it. Because, I read about people your age and they don't have money spent or saved for retirement, and all the talk like, I'm gonna have to work till I'm 67. Oh my God, no. Like, don't do that.
I feel like I have to because of student loans.
Yeah.
Thumbs up.
Yeah. Part of that too is go to a financial planner, and it might cost you a little upfront, but they can make you a lot more money.
Yeah.
And it was last year that I realized I could retire when I'm 60. I thought I had to be 63.
Yeah.
And I just started researching, and I'm like, oh my God, I can retire. So yeah, that's if I could look back, or if I could make a recommendation to you, because my sister always said this. My sister will be 67 this year. I'm going to work till I'm 68. And I'm like, yeah, no, you're not. And she didn't. When she was like 64, she was like, ugh. The thing is, as you age, I think you just get more irritated by things and less tolerant. And it's like, I don't want to put up with the rat race, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And she ended up retiring earlier. So think about that.
Yeah. Well, I took notes.
Yeah.
I took notes on what you said, because I do want to think about like what advice can other people offer me? So I thought this is the perfect time. You kind of led me right into it, even though I had it as one of the questions. But then you also said something that leads me to the other question I was going to ask you. And you said there is a little bit about living a little. So if I have 2 bucket lists, one bucket list are the things that Alysa needs to do while she ages, thinking about growing older, retirement.
Right.
That's one bucket list. Bucket list number 2 are those once-in-a-lifetime experiences. What do I put on my fun bucket list?
To me, like, I find joy in the little things. Mm-hmm. One of the things, like I mentioned, Amy going hiking in the state parks.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's gorgeous. Yeah. And it's like those staycations. Doing little trips, I find I get a lot of value out of because they're not as stressful. Yeah. And I set a budget. I'm fortunate to live in an area where there's a lot of state parks. There's some in Pennsylvania, all within an hour.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say, because you do have to live a little. I look at my house and the stuff I've gone without, and I'm like, why didn't I do that sooner?
Yeah.
Because I grew up with parents who lived through the Depression.
Yeah.
They're savers. There's always guilt if you spent money. Mm-hmm. You owned something until it wore out.
Yeah.
So it's how I was. Like, I finally bought a new sofa and I looked at my sofa and I'm like, this thing is 17 years old. I think it's okay. And I bought a really good one. Like, I bought the one that I wanted. And I think that's it. It's really cooling off the impulse buys and really thinking about, like, when I meet with my financial planner, we do it over the internet. And first thing she always says is, P, do you have any big trips planned? And what I've started to do now is kind of plan those out a bit. Yeah. So I'm not, because I could really go, I need to go on this EF tour. I need to, and do I really need to go, or do I want better quality trips?
Yeah.
So, maybe skipping one and only doing, like, Bermuda was cheap. That was like $800. Like, in the big scheme of traveling, that was an inexpensive trip.
Yeah.
And that's what I would say is figure out what brings you joy, mm-hmm. and put things together. Like, I just remember being in my 40s and I was just buying stuff piecemeal. Yeah. And so I had a bunch of mismatched stuff. And now everything kind of goes together. And I would buy it because it was cheap, that type of stuff. Because like I said, growing up, it was financial stuff.
Well, I am sitting at my desk right now that was passed down to me from Tara, who I lived with in graduate school. She left, I think, 10 years ago. And I think she had it all through graduate school. So this desk is 14 years old, and it is one of the sturdiest put together desks I've ever seen in my life. Like, it is heavy, but that's one of the things, like, when I was at IKEA yesterday, I went on quite the IKEA trip, and that's what I was looking at. And so you like a sofa, I would like a nice space to work at, to do podcasting and to work at home. And so maybe I can start looking into how I can replace this baby. And that will be on my fun bucket list. And I'll look for asthmatic hiking in Michigan.
You just go slow. Like, it's not a race.
Casual walk, and be sure you have Gatorade and you got inhalers, and it'll be fine.
Well, what's funny is when I went hiking in the Pennsylvania Grand Canyon, which is beautiful. Oh, it's gorgeous. Most of the people who were out hiking were older than me.
Yeah. Well, they have those, like, walking poles.
Yes.
Oh, hey, any late birthday gifters out there, you could get me some walking poles for my asthmatic hikes.
I've actually been researching those because as you age, they're called trekking poles, takes a lot of the pressure off of your hips.
Oh, yeah.
And your knees and stuff like that. And as athletic as I am, I've noticed, like, I threw my back out. That was awful because it's never happened to me before. And again, practical gifts.
Yes, exactly. Well, and the thing is, like, I don't feel 40. I don't think I look 40. But then I'll bend over to pick something off the floor and my knees will be like, yeah, you're 40.
Yeah.
And that's when you start to know that you're starting to age, because your body's like, let's start breaking down.
Right.
Well, Via, this has been a lot of fun. We've been on the phone now for almost 2.5 hours. I think we could talk all day.
I think we could too.
I think it's important. Like, I think our friendship and you and your friendships bring up a lot of great points that haven't been covered yet on the podcast. And I especially think it's important to consider making connections with people, but also considering how age plays a role. And I think we've made some great points about that in terms of having younger friends and older friends. And I really appreciate your advice for my 2 bucket lists. And yeah. So I'm going to start out 40 great. And I'll have to get a financial planner and see when I can retire, and then I can let people know.
You can go to mine is actually in Michigan.
Oh, okay. We'll talk. Yeah. We'll talk after. But
there are a lot of things that I love about my friendship with Bia, and certainly, we talked about she can be abrasive and she doesn't mince words, and I love it. Other people might not, but it's something that I really appreciate in her. And I think we do have different personalities, although we came together through commonality of work and teaching. And through that, I think we built a really great friendship. And although we don't hang out, except that one time we watched Catfish, we did things together. We do things together. She came and visited me at Central Michigan because that's where her undergrad was done. And now I teach here. So not only are we both from Michigan, and not only did we both go to Penn State, but we both have spent time at Central Michigan University as well. It's such a small world, right? And when she was here, we went around and saw the different things on campus where she spent time, where she lived, and doing some of the things and meeting people. And so it wasn't just like sitting somewhere on campus. It was going around and doing things. And I talked about this in Cloaked in Friendship with Aaron and Adri from Accio Politics about this idea that friends are not just one thing. We can have friends who are supportive, or we can be task-oriented. And Bia is someone who's task-oriented. And when friends are like that, you get things done, you're productive, you have lots of ideas, problems are solved, and a lot of times you're having fun and you're enjoying it while you do it. So maybe you have friends and you just get together and laugh, but maybe you have a different type of friend, right? That is someone you would want to do a task with, or work on computers, or work on cars, or do activities with, whatever the case might be. And I really enjoy that in Bia. But I also think we had a lot of important points about age and friendship, and that let's not miss out on friendship because of age, but let's consider what are sort of the benefits of having friends of different ages, right? Certainly there is, as we talked about, there can be sort of the excitement from a younger friend introducing new ideas or new adventures and that sort of thing. And then from Bia's point of view, there's the mentorship and getting advice and information from people who are older than us. And then thinking about having friends of the same age who might be from school, or they were at the same babysitter, they're at the same place, and you have that experience bond together, and you're going through similar things because of the lifespan, the certain points that you are at in development. And it's great to have friends who are going through the same things as you and who are not. And so next time, I'm going to talk to my dear friend Ashley, who I have only been friends with for about a year. And so we're going to talk about our origin story and talk about being friends when she is 10 years younger and continue these ideas. And at the end of that episode, I'm going to bring together more of a conclusion of what this means. But I just think basically this was important to me because I don't think there should be barriers to friendship. And if making friends is hard, and there is someone who is 5, 10, or 15 years younger or older than you, and it's a connection and it's a friendship and it's something that is good for our well-being and whatever the case might be, then why not make those friends? I understand that there's some cultural issues. Yes, we don't necessarily want our 13-year-old children being friends with people who are in college or older. And there's some developmental things that make sense there. But once you are adults, that goes away, right? And it should just be about making connections. And so Ashley and I are going to pick up this conversation and we'll talk about it more. So there are a couple things I'd like to hear from you. One, if you're enjoying having Best Forevers in your ear holes, there's a number of ways in which you can support the podcast. First, you can follow me and Best Forevers on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Best Forevers Pod. And then the public page on Facebook is Best Forevers, a podcast for kindred spirits. The second thing you can do is subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts or any of your podcast listening apps where you're able to do so. I appreciate the feedback, I appreciate the support, and certainly I appreciate the listen. And being a friendship podcast, another way you can support the podcast is by telling a friend about it. Maybe there is a particular episode that might speak to something that a friend is going through right now. And certainly if you're loving on this podcast, that's one way to support it. If you're really into the movement and loving on our friends and working through the issues that can damage our friendship, you'd like to support that movement and this podcast, you can do so by going to patreon.com/bestforeverspod. I have a number of different financial goals that will help the podcast continue and grow. You can check out what those goals are, and if you would like to contribute, there are many different levels of contribution that you can make and different perks that you can get. And one that I'm particularly excited about in terms of goals is that when I reach a certain goal, I'll be able to locate a wood bench, a wood-burning pen, and everyone who has contributed through Patreon and in other ways, I will burn your names and your friends' names into the bench. And when that is done, I'm going to donate it to a school as a buddy bench. Because isn't there no greater way than having people come together over conversation at a bench, finding the things that we have in common. If you're not feeling comfortable, that can signal to someone that you're not. Or if you want to make friends, you can signal. So I think a buddy bench is certainly something that is used across this nation and could continue to grow. And I hope to contribute to that through the podcast. Additionally, what I would love to hear from you, there's a couple things. First, I'd love to hear your stories about age differences, any advantages and disadvantages you see, any benefits or problems that have occurred from being friends with someone of a different age. Tell me about it. I would love to share those on the podcast. If you share those, so this comes out on June 15th. If I have your stories by Monday the 17th, nope, that's the 18th. I know it's only a couple days, but if you send me an email at bestforeverspod@gmail.com or you go to the webpage bestforeverspod.com/surveys and fill out your story of age and friendship, I'll share those with Ashley when I talk to her, right? We can include those in the episode. So if not, I still want to hear them. I'll bring them back into future episodes. Additionally, because I am now 40, much like Bia did, I need to know what needs to be on my girl, you're getting old bucket list, and girl, you got to live your life because you're getting old bucket list. Let me know what your contributions are. I'm going to make lists. I will make those public. I will document my process in my 40th year and how I'm doing. But I would love to hear advice that people have for people who are turning 40 or getting older, whatever age it might be, and things that you would put on your bucket list, whether they be little things or big things, these once-in-a-lifetime experiences. I want to hear all about it. So thanks for listening to Best Forevers this week. I had a blast talking with Bia, and I can't wait to talk to Ashley and what she thinks about this topic. So I hope you'll tune in again. Until then, just remember, doesn't matter their age, without our friends, who would we be?